Of the People's Creative Empowerment International Program. It's an hour of discussions on political, national, historic issues, and sometimes linking it forward to what's going on right now and what will most likely happen in our elections. That is just about 37 days away. Today is 19th of January 2023, and it's a Thursday. Today, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking about the significance of the Armed Forces Remembrance Day. We know that it's been celebrated or been commemorated, if you like, every 15th of January, every single year. It also honors veterans of World War I and II, as well as the Nigerian Civil War. It's a day set aside for sober reflections on the significance of the armed forces to the country. While the Armed Forces Remembrance Day is celebrated on 11th November every year globally, it is known as the Armistice Day, commemorating the end of the First World War, but with the formal end of the Nigerian Civil War following the surrender of the Biafran secessionists on January 15, 1970. The date was changed to mark the restoration of Nigeria's unity. Indeed, unity. But again, you wonder, truly, are we united since the Civil War ended? Of course, you know that we're going to be having a discussion regarding that all through this hour. We have live in the studio Dr. Reverend Father Tobin Namadi. Good to have you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Charles.
Well, this is a touching topic and it's wide. I don't know if today is going to be enough to discuss this, but let's just kick things off. For you, what is the significance of the Armed Forces Remembrance Day?
Thank you. As you have mentioned, it is in remembrance of those who died or those who survived the First and Second World War, and it is celebrated worldwide in November. But Nigeria shifted its own to January 15th, and using the end of the Biafra War as a remembrance. And looking at what happens every year when we go to the Eagle Square in Abuja, it is for me more of the ceremony, to just fulfill our righteousness, and pictures are taken, because if you look at the welfare of those who fought and those who are still alive, I saw some widows who were complaining that they were not taken care of, or the things that were supposed to be done for the fallen heroes were not done. So it looks like if it's just a ceremony, and the significance is lost, because if you just come and do a show, and you can go further to talk about those who lost their lives defending the unity of the country, one Nigeria. Then you look at what is happening now, you ask yourself, how united have we been since 53 years ago that the war ended? It looks as if we are much more divided now than even we were during the end of the war. So that is a very big question mark.
Well, again, I wanted to ask, I mean, everyone talks about the war now and how, you know, we've tried to be united since then. Do you think that the war would have been averted? You know, so many times when we talk about this thing, it feels to me like I wish we didn't have that war. Was it was it something that was necessary? Why was the war? What caused it?
No, the war was not necessary at all, but for foreign intervention. And this is a story that many people are not quite aware of. And let me just begin by saying that Biafra is still very delicate topic, not only in Nigeria, but also outside. Let me share some of my experiences.
Okay.
I did my doctorate in Belgium at the Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium. And when I submitted my topic on the role of the international community in the Nigeria-Biafra war, my supervisor called me and said, don't put your abstract in the internet, some people will stop this work. I was frightened, yes. I removed my topic from the internet because students normally put out what they're writing about. So I hid my own and held it to my chest. On the day of my defense, my internal defense, I had 3 correctors. And one of them said, look, if you want to defend this work, you have to cancel, remove 27 sentences.
27 sentences?
Yes, I said why. I said these sentences are too critical to Belgium and to Europe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they were still very sensitive about what happened because it was a big problem in Europe. The civil society in Europe was solidly behind Biafra while its governments were against.
The government of Belgium?
The government of Europe.
Of Europe?
Yes, and that was the time that the European Union was beginning.
Okay.
Yes, it was just uprooting then, and they said Biafra, Nigeria is the British affair, so leave them to sort it out, don't join, don't help Biafra. So I had another experience, so I went to London to do some research at the Royal Institute of International Affairs. I filled out the books that I wanted. After 1 hour, the books had not come. I went to the counter, I was angry. And the lady at the counter said, nah, these books, you need permission from the Home Secretary to access them.
Wow.
The books, I couldn't access them. So I came out from the library. I called Frederick Forsyth. I think many people remember him. He was with Ojukwu from beginning to the end of the war. So Forsyth said to me, Father, they have seen your name, you are a Igbo person, they will not give you the books. To collect books. Look for your sources elsewhere. So I went to California in the US, and I saw 4 shelves of library on Biafra and Igbo. That was where I wrote my thesis, this book you're having. They couldn't give me the books. So I came back to Enugu here. I went to the National Library to collect books. I filled out the books I wanted. After 3 hours, the books have not been found. I went to the counter. The lady said, how the Konya goes over there, you born a bamba. He said, come and see where the books you are looking for, where they are. The books were lying on the ground. He said, each one who will tell you. If it's not your book, I'll keep on the ground. You can come and look for yours. I said, why? That was the time they removed history from the curriculum in Nigeria. They don't want people to know about Biafra. The books were going to get rotten on the ground and they threw them away. You can understand how delicate it is to remove history entirely from curriculum, because there's no way you are going to do history in Nigeria without talking about Biafra. Biafra was very, very delicate. It divided Africa. You remember, OAU was divided. There were 4 countries that were solidly on the side of Biafra: Tanzania, Gabon, Ivory Coast, and Zambia. Their presidents were literally fighting with Nigerian representations during the peace talks. So the OAU was divided. There were a lot of people, even individuals, who volunteered to come and fight for Biafra. I remember one man from Sweden, Gustav von Rosen. He came with 4 pilots and 4 planes, freely, with his own money, to come and fight on behalf of Biafra because he saw the injustice was too much. So it is still very delicate, and the very reason why the war was fought, those reasons are still with us today. That's why we're asking, when we come to Armed Forces Remembrance Day, what have we done in order to be able to change what caused the war?
Right. I mean, let's step back a bit. You said a lot, but let me see if I can catch the ones I can catch. So, where you wrote your book, you said 27 sentences should be removed. Why was it? Was those 27 sentences implicating Europe at the time, or accomplices into what happened?
Yes. In some way, let me put it this way. The civil society in Belgium, in Holland, in Poland, in all the European countries were against their governments that they were supporting Nigeria. They were sit out, people will sit on the snow, put light and share tea on the street, block the road, forcing their... In fact, In Belgium, it was the protests from the civil society that stopped Belgium from supplying arms to Nigeria, stopped them in Holland, stopped Poland, stopped France, and all those countries that were supply, except Britain, that supported Nigeria from beginning to the end. And let me come back to your first question. Was the war inevitable? No. There was no reason to fight the war. After the pogrom, after the killing of the Easterners in the north, the Northerners were preparing for a separation. And the reason for why the pogrom was so big, the number of people killed, was that they thought that after this we have a clean separation from these people and we start our own country. The Northerners were not interested in one Nigeria at all. You go to history or ask anybody. It was the British interest in Nigeria that caused the war. The British people were losing a lot in the area of oil. The Middle East war was on, and the Suez Canal was blocked by President Nasser of Egypt. So the British people were losing 10 million pounds every day on oil because there was scarcity of oil, and Nigeria was an alternative. So they pushed the Northerners to go ahead and fight the war so that they would be able to get access to the oil in Nigeria. So Aburi Accord settled all the problems. Aburi Accord had divided Nigeria into 4 autonomous regions. The Midwest region was carved out in 1963. So you had the Northern region, the Western region, the Eastern region, and the Midwest region. Aburi Accord had done what looked like a confederation. Decentralize the government, let each region be on its own, and let us work closely and see how we can come together to a certain extent on things that are like telephone, railway, all those things that might unite, keep the country united to a certain extent. But when Gowon left Aburi on January 4th to 5th and went back to Lagos, it was the British High Commissioner, David Hunt, who told him that this accord is not good. Tell us what you need to subdue the other people and get your hand to the oil. The north is dry, so you are not going to be able to survive. So you have to get your hand on the oil. That was the only reason why the war went ahead to be fought.
Really?
Exactly. It is in history. People have to just read.
Wow.
This is very, very important for people to... The war was literally between Britain and Biafra, because the British soldiers planned every battle that Nigeria fought in Lagos. There was a special team that was sent from Britain to Lagos that were planning every battle that was fought. The Nigerian soldiers were not very enthusiastic to fight.
Well, my brain's just running. What are the questions? Which question am I asking first, or which one am I asking second? British interest. You said it was because of the oil. That's the reason why they got them.
Yeah.
Would keeping us together have made them not to get to the oil?
No, I mean, if keeping us separate, if Biafra had separated, they would still have gotten the oil, except that it would not be at the same price. Immediately Aguiyi came as the military head of state, the incentives that the British were getting from the oil was abolished, because they were getting very cheap oil at the cheapest rate. Ironsi removed it, and then they had to pay what is acceptable in other places. That was the first signal to the British. Their interest was at stake. And as I told you, 1966-67, the Middle East war, the war between the Arabs and the Israelis were going on. The war was going on. So oil was a big problem, and Britain was losing heavily on a daily basis. And this is why, with the civil servants in Lagos, with the British High Commissioner in Lagos, David Hunt, he said to Gowon, this cannot work. If you need anything, tell us, we'll give it to you. And they gave Nigeria whatever they needed from the beginning of that war to the end.
What was America's position at the time?
America's position was that Nigeria is a British affair, so they don't meddle in it. So they kept quiet. The president of America was not interested in what was happening in Britain. But let me show you what happened. Like when our people think they don't have power to do anything, in one day, the American president got 25,000 letters asking him to send food to Biafra.
In
one day, 25,000 letters. The Americans were protesting as people were protesting in Europe. In fact, we don't even know the magnitude of this war because it caused a major upset in Europe and America. And then the White House went in and came out, and the public forced them to send food. And America ended up contributing about 60% of the food that was sent to Biafra. That tells you how difficult it was for the government to ignore their people. They ignored them. They were supporting Nigeria, but in other hand, the civil society was so powerful. The money poured in. The relief effort was unprecedented in the whole world. I don't think that any other relief effort had the kind of magnitude that the relief in Biafra. The churches came together under what was called the Joint Church Aid, spearheaded by Caritas International from Rome. In fact, I interviewed the president of Caritas International sometime in 2008, George Husler, a priest in Germany. And he told me that they went to France to buy 4 planes, the very first time that an aid agency is buying separate plane for itself. And they were flying food to Biafra at Uli Airport. The Nigerian Air Force will come and destroy the airport, the runway. In the night, they will rebuild it. The planes were landing only in the night. And some of them were shot into the forest by the Nigerian Air Force. And that was how Red Cross stopped in 1968, in August. Red Cross stopped bringing food because Nigeria shot Red Cross Air Force plane. It fell between the border of Nigeria and Cameroon. And they stopped. And the director resigned from Red Cross and formed Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. That was in protest. When he formed that group, they came to Nigeria and worked to Biafra and worked at the end of the war. It was so bad.
Wow. So, I mean, in your research work, between ethics and politics, lessons from Biafra, the role of the international community and its social political implications. You mentioned that it's still a thing in Europe. That even the books, you can't even find them in the shelves because they wish they can erase this history.
Yeah.
But do you think even now they have any role at all with what's going on in Nigeria? They have influence. Is it a concerted effort consistently over time to continually watch Nigeria, if possible, keep it the way it is? Do they have a role with what's going on in Nigeria? Is Nigeria the way it is because of them, given that they have been in the forefront of, making Nigeria what it is today?
The answer is yes and no. They have influence in some ways. In other ways, we are now the cause of the problems ourselves. Because the forces, what we call the vicious circle, is a situation where you have what we call extractive political and economic structures that extract wealth and money from the poor to enrich the people who already have. You understand it?
Mm.
So this is this book I was talking to you about. Why Nations Fail.
Mm.
Origins of Power, Prosperity and Poverty. This is historical examined, where you have extractive. Extractive means not that you're extracting gold from the land, from the soil. Extractive means where you have a structure that collects money from the poor and gives it to the rich. And what they do is like what is happening in Nigeria is that you shrink the space, the economic space, the political space, and make it very narrow and admit few people into it. And then you run down the amenities and keep the people poor in order to be able to control them. Let me give you a story, an analogy to explain this. This story was told of Joseph Stalin. You remember him in Russia. That Stalin called all his generals one day and put them in one hall and brought a chicken and removed all the feathers from the chicken. It was winter, and put the chicken on the floor, and the chicken was shaking. He put his hand into his pocket and brought out chicken feed and did it, waved it in front of the chicken, and the chicken followed him. He kept it and said to his generals, "This is the way you treat the people and they will follow you always." Wow. That is stifle them so that they will come on their knees. And if you look at what is happening in the country today, this is exactly what is happening. Run down the amenities, make everything so hard. It is only in the government house that you have money. People come on their knees. So those who are blaming people who are collecting money to vote, we will talk about it some other day, for you to see the perspective where the people are coming from. The man who was responsible for almost killing the chicken, removing all the feathers, and that chicken is following him. Why? Because of the chicken feed. When you have not eaten, when you have graduated and you are 5 years, 10 years, you have not gotten a job, and somebody gives you 50,000 and says, "Do this for me, do that." So poverty is what is driving it. So the space is narrowed. For you to be able to change it, you have to go to what is called the virtuous circle. The virtuous circle is when you open up the economic and political space, so that people will now participate and get rich. And this is in history. We saw the Industrial Revolution, which started in Britain. Before then, the king would have to give you permission even to build anything. James Watt had to get special permission from the king to build the steam engine. The man who built a boat before him was put in prison because he didn't get permission from the king to build a boat. Do you get the point? So, and that was why the king was executed in 1215, the Magna Carta. So the power was now transferred to the parliament, so that you can expand the space, the political space and the economic space, so that prosperity will thrive. And what is happening here is that the space is very narrow. And before they admit you into it, you have to be on their own side. Remember what we were talking about in the last edition, about the Igwes, the traditional leaders, I prefer to call them. And the government is interfering in their appointment and wanting them to be on their side. They are not independent. So this is part of the shrinking of the space I'm talking about. So government is controlling everything. The space is very tight, and they don't want to open it up. And let me say this. Many people may not agree with me, but I would like them to take a second look at it. Government gets it wrong on purpose. If you are following my line of thought, government is not getting things wrong because they don't know. It's not because of ignorance. It is not because of geography where they come from. It is not because they don't have money to hire experts, because you know they can. And we saw it in Dr. Michael Ogbara in the Eastern region. He got a consulting firm from US that helped him to do all the things that he established. Unfortunately, the war destroyed it. That was the rising of the East. The war destroyed all the things that Ogbara started. So, and that was the opening of the space I was talking about. So, government get it wrong on purpose if you follow the analogy of the chicken. and the chicken feed. So it is not that they don't know what to do, but they don't want that space to be open so that people will get prosperous. If I'm working at Anamco and I'm earning 350,000 and you tell me that this person, that person is doing rally here and there, I leave my work to go there. Do you think so?
No, of course.
Look at all the places where people are gathering for rally and campaign, and look at the kind of people. They go to the village and then they pay people 2,000, put them in the bus, bring them to the campaign venue, and after then they take them back. Exactly this principle that the people will, if you will collect 2,000 to come. I used to do some programs in Abuja when I was there, and I had people who were coming to me, Father, if you want a crowd, 2,000, they come there and they stay for 2 hours. If you want 10,000 people, we'll raise them here. And that's what is happening here. And that is, who are those people that are bringing that don't have anything to do that are coming?
Wow. This is